Time to check in with Chris Dimakos, our CJAD legal contributor. Chris, this is a story I'd heard nothing about, but for people who've been following along, Elon Musk, of course, is now part, if you will, of Donald Trump's administration, or will be when he takes over as president. He, along with Vivek Ramaswamy, are running a department called the Department of Government Efficiency, which I think did not exist, right? Or doesn't exist even now. This is a brand new department?
Right. That's a brand new created department that's supposed to work on efficiency.
So now they're not wasting any time, just as we've seen now with cabinet appointments in this future administration. And they have already started going about trying to eliminate, if I understand this right from your note, thousands of jobs held by federal employees in the U.S. What's this about, first of all?
Right. So there's a couple of things that they've done in terms of saying that there's basically, in lack of a better term, like there's too much fat, there's too many employees that have jobs that are of no use. So the first thing that, even in private enterprise, whenever somebody wants to cut down costs, whenever someone's looking at their overhead, their operating costs, the quickest, most significant way to cut costs is payroll. That's where every company looks when they want to impress shareholders, when they want to increase profits. The easiest thing to do is to cut employees and payroll. So some of the statements they've made so far is leading everyone to believe that as soon as they get in to office, well, they're going to start calling people out and saying, you no longer work, your job is of no use anymore, and they're doing so in very creative ways. For example, they made the statement that they're going to call everyone back from being remote workers to 5 days a week office workers, and they've said they know that ahead of time that when they do this, there's going to be a large amount of employees that are just going to resign because they do not want to work 5 days a week in the office. Their job is a remote job. So they're going to do so with the understanding, and they've explicitly said that they know this is going to happen, that people are going to resign as a result. So, Amazon did something very similar recently. So it's important for everyone to know out there that many times when companies conduct new policies or new work policies or work from home or come back to the office, sometimes it's not just about that. Sometimes it's about getting you to say, I don't want that, I want to leave. And they don't want to pay you to leave.
Right.
So they much rather you do it on your own. And we're going to start seeing a lot of that coming out, where the government's going to try to say, here's the new set of rules we're playing by. If you don't like them, we're happy to show you the door. And we don't owe you any severance package because you're the one that's severing the relationship, not us.
You sound to me like you left that sort of door open for if this happens to you, even though, the employer thinks, well, I can get out of this now by not having to pay anything in terms of, a settlement. You can challenge this and courts would be interested in hearing this, or is that what you're suggesting? Do you have a case here?
So I think for right now, you're in your car listening. I think what you should know is this, is that there are times where your employer fires you. It's very clear. They terminate your job, and they can use a number of different reasons why they're doing so. But there are times where the employer says, we want you to do it yourself. We want to make your conditions such that you want to voluntarily leave this job. You don't want to be here anymore. And when that happens, we've seen it. There's a term for it. It's called constructive dismissal. It's when you basically get fired, but it's not the employer saying it. They're just making it so that you do it yourself. That's illegal, and I'm not telling you that every single employee who gets called back to work can file a complaint. But what I am saying is, the law is very general in the sense that it addresses what you can and cannot do, and lawyers are hired so that they can try and argue that their set of facts fall into this, legal framework, and then the opposing counsel will try to argue that their set of facts falls into this different set of, this different box of laws. And so it's always important to know when you're going through something and your gut tells you, hey, this isn't right, this is not right what's happening here, find out about what the context is about what's happening, what this new policy represents to you. Because in some cases, by you saying, I'm just going to resign and walk away, you might be leaving a substantial amount of money on the table that a tribunal, or even just through negotiations, your employer might pay you, because they know they don't stand a chance if this thing goes to court. So very important to be informed when you have these drastic changes in your conditions of work. Understand what they represent and why they're being done. Try and figure out. Most of the time, employees are the best judges. They know what's going on within the company. They know better than any lawyer does. And if you have a feeling that it's done just because they want you to walk out the door, well, then there are laws that can protect you in those cases.
Yeah, but how would you ever know that? I mean, it seems to me, you mentioned Amazon, right, about telling workers. We're seeing more and more companies, and this has been going on for a while, Chris, suggesting, if you will, that employees better start coming back to the office, and employees may balk at the beginning and some may leave. But it would seem to me that's the employer's prerogative, is it not?
It is the employer's prerogative, and they have the right to do so. But there are some cases where, I mean, if you get down to the facts of it, that there were jobs that were never in-office jobs to begin with. It wasn't like they started off in the office, and then during COVID they went remote, and now they want to call them back. Some jobs have never been.
I see.
They were hiring employees that were 2 and 3 hours away from the office. They've always been a remote job, and all of a sudden, there's this new policy that they want those employees to start coming into work 3 or 4 hours away. Well, a flag should be raised there and say, how come? What's this change about? What happened at the company that the employees that have always been remote employees, that have always been working, from their homes 3 and 4 hours away, why are they all of a sudden being told that they have to drive or have to move their home and move their families because they want you in the office? And more often than not, companies are finding out that, hey, you know what? When we do this, we're able to get rid of a lot of employees who say, I'm not doing that, I'm not moving. And then they don't have to pay anything. They don't have to pay any severance in terms of it's the employee who's saying, I'm not doing that, I'm not coming to work anymore, here's my 2 weeks' notice. And when that happens, when you flip the script, well, then they save a lot of money. So I'm not saying that in every case you have a claim, but be very conscious of the fact that employees have a very good judge of what's going on in the company and why these policies are being enacted to begin with. And yes, sometimes it's just about becoming more efficient and coming back to the office, but sometimes there are a certain set of circumstances that say, I wonder why this is really going on here. Is it really because they want to improve efficiency, or is it because they want a couple of these employees that have been there for a long time to say, no, thank you, I'm walking out?
Well, to your point, and I hadn't thought of that, obviously if your job originally was working from home and you weren't sent there because of the pandemic, that's always been your sort of employment status, to all of a sudden be told to have to come in the office, I imagine that's something that'd be something worth challenging, because you're right, that's a completely different situation.
That is a completely different situation. And also, whenever you have these policies that affect a large number of employees across the board, sometimes what the company does is they try to couple some employees that shouldn't be targeted by this new policy and say, you know what if we include them in this new policy?
Right.
They're probably going to quit, because they don't want this, but they were never intended to be part of this to begin with. But by doing so, we're able to cut down on our workforce as well without having to pay out any type of package whatsoever. So I'm not saying that all policies are illegal and all policies that may negatively affect an employee are illegal, but if you're an employee, just try and figure out here, is this thing legit? Is this really sincere? Or is there something behind here that the company is saying, let's put this out there, we're going to reduce our workforce by 10%. By doing so, it's going to cost us very little money, and then we can recycle with different employees.
Good point. You got to pass the smell test, I guess, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Chris, thank you so much. Appreciate it.